Hello everyone, welcome to BCAS Tax Gurucool. It is an initiative of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society and we take you through important taxation subjects every month. Myself Kinjal Bhuta and I am going to talk about issues under faceless assessments and appeals. Today's topic is about issues under faceless assessments and appeals. Faceless assessments and appeals are the new provisions which have been introduced in past couple of years, wherein the entire assessment procedure and the appellate procedure has been shifted from the physical mode to a electronic mode, wherein there is no human interaction whatsoever between the assessee and the income tax authorities. So these provisions have been introduced and are developing and evolving over the period of time. Today, my focus will be only on discussing the issues which are prevalent under these new schemes. So let me give you a brief background about the faceless provisions. The history of faceless provisions goes way back in 2015, wherein first time the e-assessment provisions were introduced. They were introduced in 2015 on a pilot basis in 4 metro cities. In those cities, the e-assessment had been started on a few corporate assessees, which was optional, and they wanted to try the efficacy of the procedures. After receiving the success at the e-assessment level, it got approved and it got improvised into many other cities, and then it was made pan-India. So the e-assessment was brought about in a quite phased manner right from 2015 to 2019. In 2019, there was one landmark development which was brought about in e-assessment schemes, wherein there was a centralized verification scheme which was introduced in 2019. That particular scheme again had a lot of improvisation. There were a lot of notifications, circulars, instructions, and many other provisions to make it better, considering the experiences which were faced by the assessees and the income tax authorities. And later on, it got converted into e-assessment schemes. Finally, the Faceless Assessment Scheme was introduced in September 2019, and faceless assessments were made mandatory for almost all classes of assessees except for a very few which have been exempted from the categories. So there are certain international taxation cases and certain fraud cases which have been exempted from the faceless assessment schemes. Apart from that, all assessments which happen between the assessee and the authorities are to be done compulsorily under the faceless assessment procedures. Section 144B was introduced in the Income Tax Act, and that was the section, or that is the section which is guiding the entire faceless assessment procedures right now. Going forward, after faceless assessments, we had come up with faceless appeals and faceless penalty procedures. So these provisions, faceless assessment, appeal procedures and penalty procedures, have been introduced by way of certain legislative changes in the Income Tax Act, and at the same time the extensive procedures have been brought about by way of notifications and circulars. Faceless appeals was effective from August 2020, and the latest addition into these set of schemes was faceless penalty scheme, which came upon from January 2021. All of these procedures have been specified in notifications and circulars which are available on the government portal. Lastly, the Faceless Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, which is Faceless ITAT, has also been introduced in the budget in the last finance bill, and it has been enacted into an act. So the faceless ITAT is also in the pipeline. It is going to be introduced very soon. We still do not have a procedural scheme which has been effective for faceless ITAT. However, since it is a part of the Income Tax Act, we expect the scheme to come out soon. There were another host of other procedures which the government is planning to bring and convert into faceless, like right from jurisdiction of the assessing officers to the revision proceedings under section 263, 264, to rectification procedures under section 154, and many such other procedures are expected to be converted into faceless, a uh, complete faceless procedures. It has to be brought about very soon, so we do expect those schemes to come about. So there is a lot of development which still is going to happen in this particular area. It is a quite evolving topic administrative wise. So the entire faceless set of schemes, as what we read from the provisions which have been brought about, is depending upon three particular things or pillars, which I may call it as efficiency, transparency, and accountability. If we read the legislative provisions, these three words or agendas have been kept common. As we all know, the entire agenda of bringing faceless procedures was to eliminate complete human interaction between the authorities and between the assessee, and that is the reason efficiency, transparency, and accountability are made the most important objectives of faceless schemes. Now, there are a lot of issues, obviously, since the faceless schemes are quite new. People are trying to adapt. It is quite new, even for the income tax authorities who are accustomed to doing the assessment procedures and appeal procedures physically, one to one, by meeting the assessee. So, it is a very new scheme which is there for everyone who is involved in these procedures. And since this is a teething phase, there has been lot of issues which are being faced by the assessee or by income tax authorities likewise. Though there are a lot of merits to this scheme because it brings about a lot of efficiency and transparency along with it and aims to reduce corruption to a great extent. However, today's session we are going to talk about the issues which one is facing. So the most important legal issue in this entire procedures is challenging the constitutional validity of the procedures. Now, when I talk about constitutional validity, what I mean is the entire basis of the legal provisions which have been brought about, those provisions are being challenged in various courts of law. There are multiple high courts in which there have been writ petitions which have been filed to challenge the constitutional validity of the procedures. The constitutional validity of the faceless appeal scheme has also been challenged and it is pending before the apex court, and we are expecting to get some judgment or some relaxation in the provisions by 2022. So this is one of the major legal issue which is hindering over these particular schemes. Another thing is lack of natural justice. This is another very common and debated issue which has been rampant between the professionals after the introduction of these schemes. Now, when I mean lack of natural justice, I mean that the natural justice or the right to be heard is a constitutional right of every assessee, which seems to be taken away by way of these faceless procedures. There has been no provision which has been given in the act wherein there can be any physical interaction with the income tax authority. The only kind of meeting which is possible is a personal meeting by way of a video conference, and that also is available only at the discretion of the authorities, as it is mentioned in the scheme. So this is the reason why the natural justice, which is a most important right of every particular individual, is being also challenged in various high courts, and it has been appreciated and recognized that this is an important right and faceless procedures cannot override this right. Another relevant issue is that, especially in case of faceless appeals and faceless penalty, the entire procedure has been brought about by way of a notification or a circular. The procedure is not there anywhere in the Income Tax Act. Income Tax Act just has the relevant provisions. However, the entire procedural format has been brought about by way of provisions. So this is one of an important legal question. Can, if there are such huge extensive provisions which are of such a huge magnitude, can those be provided by way of a delegated legislation, which means by way of circulars or notifications? Is that legally considerable or not? That is another thing which can be challenged upon. Another issue which we see is that when we talk about faceless assessments, it is faceless and nameless only for the assessee, whereas when it comes to department, they definitely know that who is the assessee. So to a certain extent, it seems to be a little one-sided, and it is something which has been also legally to be extended or to be seen about. Another thing is, another few couple of issues are that since this entire procedure is online, there are a lot of confidentiality and cyber threat or risk which can be faced under the provisions, because all the information is transmitted only through the electronic medium, and we till date do not have that kind of a robust IT infrastructure in place. At least it has not been informed publicly to all the assessees. So one wonders that what is going to happen about the confidential documents which are transmitted electronically. So that is also one of the hindrance which is possible to be disputed in another couple of following years. So now, going forward from the legal issues, there are lot of practical issues as well. In case when the functioning of the entire faceless assessments and appeals is considered. So one of the important thing which we have experienced is that the submissions which are filed by the assessee are not considered. So the only way in which the submissions can be made are by way of electronic medium through the income tax portal, wherein the assessee makes a legal and a written submission, uploads all the documents and put forth its arguments. Now it has been seen when the orders have been passed, the submissions of assessee at most of the times have not totally been considered. They have just been skipped. Either the assessment orders are one line which says that the submissions of assessee are taken on record, however we do not consider. So this is one thing which is an important hindrance faced by many of the assessees in the past concluded assessment season, and it needs to be developed. These submissions have to be considered. Also, there have been a lot of litigation which has been done because of these issues. Another relevant thing is that the time which is given to respond to these notices is very limited. It is just probably 3 to 4 days on an average. So when the show cause notices are given towards the end or the conclusion of the assessment season, hardly 3 to 4 days are given to the assessee to make legal submissions as to why the addition should not be made. Now that is considerably a very less time given to assessee to respond, considering that the submissions have to be made in writing and not everyone is well versed to write legally. So enough time has to be given, and this is one thing which everyone is facing as an issue. Another aspect of this part is that As per the faceless assessment schemes, there has to be a draft order which has to be preceded before the passing of a final assessment order, and the draft order has to come along with the show cause notice. Now what has been seen is that the draft, either in most of the cases, draft order and show cause notice both are not issued, or either of them are issued, or only a show cause notice is issued. Now, as per the law and as per lot of high court writ petition decisions which have come, it is mandatory to issue draft order and a show cause notice. Both of them are required to be issued to the assessee before passing of final order, and a sufficient opportunity should be given for the assessee to reply or revert to these particular show cause notices. So this is something which has not been happening, and because of which there are orders which have been being passed without taking into record what the assessee has to say about it. During the assessment procedures, the assessee, if cannot submit the documents within the given time, an adjournment request has been always given by the assessee to the department to give them certain time to reply to those particular notices which have been issued. Now, what have been seeing is that the adjournment request of the assessee have not been considered. At innumerable places, the adjournment request of the assessee has not been replied to. Instead, what is happening is that even without granting the adjournment, the assessment orders are getting issued to the assessee upfront. So this is an important thing which again hits back to our earlier issue which we had taken, is of not giving sufficient opportunity or violation of natural justice of the assessee. And coming back to the same point is that in lot of cases, the assessee has been requesting for a video conference hearing. However, that request is not being acceded to, and no video conference facility is being given to the assessee, and the orders are being passed without giving an opportunity of a video conference. So all of these issues are practical issues, but again they go back to the legal issues of not giving enough opportunity. And another important practical issue is that in certain matters which are quite complex, there are quite huge matters. Certain matters might be so huge that the documentation itself is quite bulky, and there are limitations when it comes to the size of the attachments which can be uploaded. So there are a lot of issues wherein one single document has to be divided into innumerable documents and to be uploaded, which is creating quite cumbersome situation for the assessee. Also, certain complex matters we all know is more comfortable to be discussed in person, which is very difficult to be put it down into writing and then submitting it. So these are another issues which are being faced by various assessees. Now, whatever issues which everyone is facing, some of the issues we unfortunately do not have any solution. They have been challenged before the various courts. However, I want to list down certain suggestions which may make our procedural battle a little reasonable, which may help us and bring us some favorable orders for the assessee. So these are just few of very practical tips, certain things which we need to adapt ourselves to be in line with the faceless procedures. So first and foremost is timely and prompt responses to all the notices which have been issued. One common thing which we have seen is that when the notices are not being responded, there are orders which are coming and which are adverse to the assessee. So one thing which we need to do under the faceless procedures is not to take a leeway and make timely submissions. Even if one is not ready before the due date, it is advisable either to submit something, make certain partial submissions, or if even that is not possible, take an adjournment before the expiration of the due date which has been mentioned in the notice. So prompt reply are going to help into at least some certain kind of reasonable orders. So that is something which we need to do as assessees. We need to be proactive, considering that the time limit has been reduced to give replies to the notices. Another important thing is that whatever communication which happens under the faceless procedures happens only via email and SMSs. So the only way in which the assessee is communicated about the notices is through the email address and the contact number on which an SMS is always issued when a notice has been issued. So giving appropriate email address and appropriate mobile number is of paramount importance. This is something which should not be ignored. One needs to check that the email address and the mobile number which is given on the portal, which is given on the appeal forms, or which is given in the return forms, are correct email address and contact details, because this is the only medium through which they are going to contact us and through which we are going to be aware about the notices which have been issued. Another critical skill which we need to develop is developing good writing skills. Now, when I mean by good writing skills, it need not necessarily be very elaborative legal skills, but good skills would mean simple and clear writing, which means clarity of facts, accuracy of facts should be there, and most important is the facts and the legal issues have to be presented in a very reasonable format, in a format in which the income tax officer or any other lay person can understand. So that is what I mean by good writing skills. That is something which we need to develop as assessees. We were never used to the same, because earlier the procedures were always physical. So there was never a need to honor our writing skills. But now, yes, that is an important skill set which ones need to develop, and that brings certain kind of favorable orders for the assessee. Another important, along with the writing skills, goes hand in hand is presentable submissions. Once we make submissions, we also have to give corresponding attachments and give cross-referencing of those submissions. So giving everything in a ready platter to the income tax authority by giving very well-worded legal submissions, putting appropriate comments into the remarks column, selecting appropriate attachments, giving legible attachments, all of these factors put together brings about a presentable submission. If we try to bring a presentable submission by way of writing, by way of attachments, and by way of following certain rules while making the submissions, I think that is going to go a very long way to give you satisfactory assessment orders. The easier we make for the income tax authorities to read our submissions, I think the better can be the outcome. And lastly, since the entire procedures are dependent upon the electronic medium, we definitely need to invest into good hardware and software infrastructure. We need to have better scanners, better laptops, good configured hardware devices or web cameras for video conferences, as well as a very good internet bandwidth to upload our bulky submissions, without which the entire procedure can be quite cumbersome. So this is an investment which one needs to take for a better experience under faceless assessments. These are just a few of the suggestions which one can act upon. But yes, one needs to take the entire assessment and appeal procedure with a positive outlook and try to see that one can submit everything which is possible from their end to have a better outcome under the faceless assessments and appeal procedures. So I think that's it from my side. Thank you everyone. Thank you all of the viewers who are watching me right now. And if you have any feedback on this particular video, please kindly have it on this particular link which has been mentioned. We would love to receive your videos. We would love to receive your feedback on the videos. And stay tuned with us for more such informative videos to BCAS Tax Gurucool. Thank you so much and wish you all a very happy Diwali.